It is absolutely a prequel, yes. Well, this happened 6 years before Chocolat. Vianne has just stepped off the plane from New York, where she's been living with her mother and where her mother has died. She's scattered her mother's ashes into the Hudson and has decided to start anew. This is the first time Vianne has travelled alone because she's been with her mother throughout her life and her mother has directed the course they've taken. So she has choices to make. She's also in the very early stages of a pregnancy that wasn't planned. She doesn't really know how to be a mother or whether she will be a good mother or indeed will she be any kind of mother at all. She doesn't know the first thing about chocolate. She can't cook. She isn't even called Vianne at this point. So there is a way for her to go before she becomes the Vianne we think we know in Chocolat. And this is why I was talking about looking at where we come from, because I was thinking at the end of The Strawberry Thief that I know a lot about the journey Vianne has been on. I know about how she's changed, how she's interacted with people, her confrontations, her beginnings of self-knowledge, but I don't know where she came from. I don't know her origin. And so I thought it would be an interesting thing to explore that. I didn't even know if I was going to write any sequels, let alone a prequel. Besides which, when I wrote Chocolat, I wrote it very much on the lines of the Westerns and the samurai movies that I loved when I was a child, where a stranger blows into a village. And I didn't want to know too much about her background because I liked that element of transience and mystery in her character. But obviously, everybody has a backstory. It's just a question of when you get to know it. She has been many people in the same way that her mother has been many people. And they have been basically traveling throughout Europe and the world. With the sense that they are being pursued by something or someone. We don't know yet whether this is Vianne's mother's paranoia speaking because her mother has a number of issues, or whether in fact there is somebody after them. But they have never stayed in the same place for very long. They've never had a home. She has never been allowed to have friends because friends are an attachment that's a dangerous thing if you're planning to move on quickly. And she has developed a number of powers, if you want to call it that, including the ability to understand people on a very emotional level, understand what they want, what they need, how to please them, how to get what you want from them. And these are abilities that have served her well in this itinerant lifestyle that she's had. She has always been an immigrant wherever she's been because she doesn't actually know what country she comes from. And so she arrives in France as an immigrant with false papers, wanting to hopefully settle down for this child that she's carrying and hopefully to get a job. And she talks her way into a job at a cafe, which is run by a grumpy old man called Louis Martin, who has secrets of his own. She hides the fact that she has never cooked a meal or anything that hasn't just required a kettle in a hotel room. And she manages to find her way in this new place and with these new people who are really quite traditionalist and, well, not to say slightly prejudiced against outsiders and immigrants. Oh, I had lots of fun because cooking is not easy. I know this because I'm not Vianne, and I'm much better at writing about cooking than I am at actually doing it. And inevitably, there are some mistakes, but she sees a parallel between what she and her mother have done all their lives, which is effectively try to find entries into people's personalities and their moods and try to change those things through various recipes which have nothing to do with food. And she realizes that food and magic are actually quite close cousins, that food and the preparation of food can be something that illuminates people's personalities, that gives you insights into them, which allows you to change their mood, which allows you to make connections with them. And she realizes that it is a form of domestic magic, which is effectively harmless. And she is drawn to it for that reason. She feels that the magic she and her mother have used has made them outsiders, has forced them to move on and not to become attached to a place. But she thinks that maybe this is the way she can do that and use her skills, but still remain grounded and solidly attached to where she is, because she wants to make a home for herself and for this child. and she desperately wants to be a good mother. I write across a kind of spectrum of magical worlds, if you like. I have my fantasy books where the magic is very firmly entrenched in the universe and it has to be established and it has to have rules. With the Chocolat books, that hasn't always been true because I wanted to walk a line between fantasy and realism. And so I don't generally use the term magic very often. And when I do, it's usually in a slightly satirical way. And what I wanted to do was to allow the reader to take on board as much acceptance of fantasy and magic as they wanted to, and no more. So some people went, yeah, she's a witch, that's fine, I'll buy that. She can see into people's minds, that's fine, I will buy that. And other people go, well, she's a first person narrator, she's not that reliable. Maybe this is her way of looking at her own empathy through some kind of metaphor. I wanted to make those things possible. So the magic I use is really very much about a person's perception of the world, as opposed to solutions and spells. And she uses cards because her mother uses cards, mostly as a nostalgic thing, but also as a way of grounding herself, looking at visible symbols of the problems that she has and trying to work them out in a kind of metaphorical pictorial way. As for her special insight, I wanted that to be something that was that perhaps could be seen as a natural human insight from somebody who has a special kind of empathy or an actual special skill. But I wanted to keep the concept of magic down to a very human level so that there is no sense that anybody is special or has to go away and learn magic or that there are particular rules to this kind of magic. It's the same distinction between the words that we use to talk about magic, words like enchantment and charm and glamour and this kind of thing, which can have a very specific meaning in the magical world, but which also are very much rooted in the human heart. This idea that actually anybody can have charm or glamour or charisma or these things that we use to mean certain qualities within human beings, that it's not necessarily something supernatural at all.